Imagine you're in a foreign country and you've just been in a serious automobile accident, and when you arrive at the hospital, you're dismayed and alarmed to discover that you don't understand anything the doctors and nurses are saying to you, and there's nobody on site who speaks your language. However, if the hospital participates in a remote interpreting service, then your problem would be solved. Let's find out more about this growing field, its benefits and opportunities for qualified candidates. We'll discuss the two main modalities of remote interpreting, the benefits they offer, and the qualifications that are needed to work in the field. The two main modalities of remote interpreting are telephone and video interpreting. Remote interpreting in general offers many benefits. For one thing, it's more efficient because interpreters do not have to travel between multiple clinics or hospitals or even multiple sites within a large hospital system. Instead, they can remain in a call center and take many calls from many different locations in a short period of time. For the same reason, it's cost effective for the providers because they do not have to pay salaries and benefits to many different interpreters for many languages, but rather they can contract these services out to an interpreting services provider at a more reasonable economic rate. Also, it provides interpreting services that are available immediately at the press of a button without having to wait for anybody to get there. And there's the availability for less common languages. For example, in the United States, it's common for hospitals to employ interpreters in Spanish, but if someone else arrives speaking a less commonly used language in that area, you're not likely to have an interpreter on staff for that language, but you can use a remote interpreting service for that purpose. According to Medical Interpreter's Guide to Telephone Interpreting by International Medical Interpreters Association, patients who speak less commonly requested languages and those who would not otherwise have an interpreter available often welcoming interpreting as an equalizer of language access for all. There are some advantages to telephone interpreting specifically, for example, when it's a situation where the provider and the patient are not together in person, for example, a telephone encounter between a doctor and a patient, the remote interpreter could also be on the phone with them at the same time. There could also be situations where the patient's privacy is at issue and they would prefer not to have the interpreter present in the room, but rather on the phone. The advantages of video interpreting include situations where you would want to be able to see facial expressions, visual cues, and also when working with children or elderly patients. According to VRI Language Line Solutions, it's difficult these days for any organization to scale up to meet the need. For example, in the United States, 61 million people speaking other languages other than English, 28 million of whom are not English proficient. Remote interpreting offers an effective, innovative, cost-effective way to improve customer care. We've talked about some of the benefits of remote interpreting. Now let's talk about the qualifications that are needed for interpreters who wish to work in the remote field. First of all, any interpreter needs the same general qualifications. Proficiency in both languages is an absolute must, and general training and experience as an interpreter is obviously important as well. Certification and membership in a professional association will help to make you more competitive. Specifically for remote interpreting, a clear speaking voice is very important because you need to make sure that people can hear and understand everything you're saying through whatever modality you're using. Note-taking ability is especially important as well because of the length of utterances that tends to be longer in remote interpreting. And some organizations provide specific training for remote interpreters, which can be beneficial. According to Medical Interpreter's Guide for Telephone Interpreting, quality in all modalities of interpreting depends on the training and skills of interpreters. In closing, remote interpreting allows people around the world to access communication in many important settings and affords a variety of work opportunities to those who are prepared to take advantage of them.